Okay, well, I talked to the AV person, and he's ready to go, so let's go. Well, good morning, and welcome to the League of Women Voters Candidates Forum for 2024. My name is Susan Rosenberg, and I am president of the Richfield chapter. I want to thank you all for coming to learn more about our local candidates, and also to candidates that took time out of their busy schedule to participate in our very important event. The League of Women Voters of Richfield does not support or oppose candidates for public office or political parties. Candidate forums follow the unbiased and impartial format established and published by the League of Women Voters Minnesota and the League of Women Voters of Richfield. All events are free and open to the public and the media. We, on the League of Women Voters of Richfield, believe that an informed and educated voter is a better voter. That is why we sponsor forums such as this one, as well as participate in community events such as PennFest. The League has always been a strong voice for democracy and voters' rights. The candidates for the legislative offices are incumbent Mike Howard and Jeffrey Thompson. Unfortunately, Jeffrey Thompson is not available and is not here today. So Mike is going to be a singular question answer. And so our candidates for City Council will be here at the next session, and we'll introduce them as they come in. Donna Drummond is a member of League of Women Voters of Richfield and an experienced moderator. She will moderate both of the forums, explain procedures, and manage the rotation of speakers. The forum will be video recorded in its entirety and will be online at a later date, and it is streaming as well on the Richfield channel as well as YouTube. Time limits for all comments will be strictly enforced. In fairness to all candidates and the audience, we ask that these limits be respected. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for opening remarks to introduce themselves. The moderator will then ask questions from the League of Women Voters Richfield and follow up with questions from the audience so that we can address as many questions as possible in the time available. Legislative candidates will have 2 minutes to answer each question, and due to the number of City Council candidates and time constraints, there will only be 1 minute to answer. If time permits, each candidate will have 2 minutes for a closing statement. Karen Jenkins, a member of the League of Women Voters Richfield, is the timer, and she will hold up signs to indicate when you have 15 seconds remaining and when you must stop. All candidates will rotate in the order in which they respond. Voters attending the forum may submit written questions to the candidates and will be accepted throughout the forum. League members will be moving around the room with blank cards and writing instruments so the members of the audience can submit questions. All questions are reviewed by League of Women Voters members to ensure that questions are applicable to all candidates, are forward-looking, not personal, and are addressed to subjects relevant to the forum. All questions remain the property of the League of Women Voters of Richfield. Campaign literature, buttons, signs, clothing, or any other campaign-related items cannot be brought into the room. However, I think most of you noticed as you came in, there are tables available for all campaign materials as well as some of the League of Women Voters materials. So with that, I will turn it over to Donna Drummond, and we'll get this forum started. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Susan. Mr. Howard, since you're by yourself this morning, we thought it might be helpful for you to explain how an idea becomes a law, the whole process through the legislature.
Thank you, Donna, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum, and to everyone who's watching. This is just such an invaluable part of the process for voters to understand their choices in this election. And I really appreciate the question. I think some of us remember the old video, the Schoolhouse Rock video about how a bill becomes a law. And there's elements of that that are true, and a bill can take many different paths. And I thought what might work well is to give an example of how a bill became a law and really the way the process should work and does often work. And often a bill, how an idea becomes a law is that regular Minnesotans identify a problem that's in need of a solution. And that happened here in Richfield. We had a Nicole Smith Holt lost her son Alec because he could not afford the insulin he needed to survive. It was a horrible tragedy, and out of that grief, Nicole and James went looking for solutions to make sure that this could never happen again. As the representative for Richfield, I met with Nicole and James at their kitchen table to understand what happened. I didn't know much about prescription drugs, about affordable insulin. So first, as a legislator, I had to learn. I had to learn about the issue, what are the challenges. Learning with the public about an issue is the first step. Then working alongside Nicole and James and other insulin advocates, we worked on drafting legislation with experts that have expertise in prescription drug law, and we tweaked and got ready to introduce a bill. So I signed on as the chief author of a bill, introduced it, and once you introduce a bill, then you got to go get and organize the support to move it forward. So I went around to my colleagues, talked to them about the issue, got co-authors on the bill. Nicole and James and folks who are advocates went to talk to their other legislators to raise up this issue. And little by little, we picked up momentum. And what does momentum look like? Well, for a bill, it means clearing stops in committees where legislators have the chance to get into the weeds, ask questions, make changes, and let that bill move along the process to ultimately being able to have a vote on the House floor, and then a parent process over in the Senate where there's a vote on the Senate side. In this instance, when we got to our two bills, there were some differences between the House and the Senate, and so you have what's called a conference committee where House and Senate come together, try to work out those differences and reach an agreement. And once you're able to reach agreement on that, the bill goes back to the House and the Senate for a final vote. That process with this bill took about 2 years, but we were ultimately successful in passing the Alex Smith Insulin Affordability Act, which to date has been utilized by more than 2,000 Minnesotans to secure affordable insulin when they need it most. And the reason I like this story as an example is because I think some folks think that laws are come up with by folks behind these closed doors, and there are things that were sort of put onto people. But really, the right way and the way it often happens is ideas come from the ground up, from Minnesotans, and it's about a partnership, working with people to have an idea that solves a problem become a law.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Howard. And we'll go to the prepared questions. The first question is, why are you running for office, and what will be your major priorities if elected?
Thank you. In way of an introduction, I'm Michael Howard, your state representative, and it's been an honor to serve District 51A in the Minnesota House, which includes all of Richfield and about 5,000 voters in South Minneapolis as well. I'm running for re-election because I believe in this community. I believe in the resilience, strength, kindness of neighbors banding together, advocating for one another. And that's the kind of partnership that we've had over these last 2 years. And when we lead together with community, we can do big things that will improve lives. And again, that's the vision we set forth these last 2 years. And we were able to do important things that I believe will set our community and state on a path to a vibrant future. Historic investments in our schools and fully funding free school lunches for our kids, guaranteed paid family medical leave, finally taking action on gun violence prevention, passing a nation-leading climate change bill to get us towards 100% clean energy, protecting reproductive rights, and one that's close to home for me as the chair of our housing committee, passing a historic housing bill that will build thousands of homes to rent and to own and create thousands of new first-time home buyers. We were able to succeed because we listened to our community and took action, but we know that we have more to do. As I talk with folks, it's clear to me that our economy is still tilted against average families. The cost of housing, healthcare, childcare continues to go up. Meanwhile, corporations see their profits soar and take advantage of every loophole they can to pad their bottom lines. And this fundamental tilt in our economy requires more attention, more work, and that's what I want to do over the next 2 years, is work to make our economy work better for everyone so that families have the freedom and agency to decide their own destiny, to make that pursuit of happiness just a little bit easier. We can do that. We've done it these last 2 years, and I can't wait to make more progress.
Thank you. And just a reminder, your answers are limited to 2 minutes. The second question is, Minnesota has stark racial inequities in income, education, and home ownership. What are your ideas for reducing and eliminating these inequities?
It's a great question, and it's a question that really should guide in a lens we apply to everything we do at the legislature. Minnesota, we like to have this Minnesota exceptionalism, right? That Minnesota is a state that's doing things the right way, and there's a lot of that that's true, but we have some of the worst racial inequities in the country when it comes to opportunity gaps. And I want to focus my comments on housing, because it's an area where if we can create safe, stable, affordable homes for everyone, it is going to help us address our opportunity gaps, some of our wage gaps. I like to say all roads lead back to home. And some of the ways we've taken action on that over the last few years is creating a nation-leading first-generation down payment assistance program. This last year, we provided $150 million for down payment assistance that's intentionally crafted so that it is available for families if you're the first person in your family's history to own a home. We know that for folks to be able to own a home and build generational wealth, that is the cornerstone of being able to etch out, that American dream. And in Minnesota, we have one of the worst racial home ownership gaps. And for a lot of folks I talk to in Richfield and otherwise, folks they're paying high rents that in some cases are more than what our mortgage might be, but it's that securing that down payment assistance at the front end that is the hurdle that they need to overcome. And so by focusing on solutions to reduce those barriers to entry will be vital. The other thing we must do is eliminate exclusionary zoning. Our state and country has a horrible history of racial segregation when it comes to our housing, and the legacy of that still exists today. We need to do work to make sure that it's easier to build the kinds of affordable homes that everybody wants.
Thank you. The next question is, which one issue do you think is the most important to work on with legislators across the aisle?
I'll have to try to broaden my answers to not just housing, because I think that's so critical, but this is an exact example, and I want to follow up on my last answer about eliminating exclusionary zoning and opening up the power to build more homes. It's an issue that we're finally seeing national attention. When President Obama mentioned this in his DNC address, and I was on my couch cheering about it, the idea that we need to make it easier to build starter homes, duplexes, fourplexes, the kinds of homes that are in a more affordable price point will help unlock the opportunity of more housing in a state where we have a huge shortage of homes. The reason why the cost of rent and homes continue to increase fundamentally is that we're 100,000 units short in housing. And this is a great issue that we should work on in a bipartisan fashion, and we have. States from Washington to Montana have taken action on this issue. And so we have a set of policies that we're moving forward, and it includes Republicans and Democrats working together. And unlikely allies, folks from the faith-based and our labor unions supporting it, but also our business community and home builders. I think there's a broad agreement, no matter your partisan leanings, that a home is a path to prosperity. And so it's an issue that warrants more action, and it's one that lends itself well to working across the aisle.
Thank you. As a member of the legislature, what measures, if any, would you support to reinforce or ensure voter confidence in our elections?
It's a great question. We need to protect and strengthen our democracy here in Minnesota and across the country, especially in the face of the very intentional, I would say, misinformation and efforts to disrupt that process that we've seen in our political process, in particular from former President Donald Trump. In Minnesota, first I want to say, to be clear, we have an excellent election with high integrity here in Minnesota and across the country. We have excellent election workers who are not political workers. They are workers in our cities and our counties all across the state administering our elections. We have incredible volunteers, election judges. So first thing we need to do as legislators is say that and be a strong advocate for the Minnesotans who are administering our elections. And we passed legislation this last year to increase protections for those folks who have increasingly and unfairly come under attack by folks that are intentionally trying to discredit our process. The other thing we need to do is make it easier and more accessible for folks to vote. Things like automatic voter registration and early voting are ways that we can increase participation. And when we increase participation in our democratic processes, we make our elections and our democracy stronger. So the two things we need to do as legislators are to continue to promote and fight for our election workers that are doing great work, and continue to make sure that we're expanding opportunities for Minnesotans to participate.
Thank you. The next question is about the environment. What is your position on environmental sustainability, and what policies, if any, do you plan to support to address climate change?
In terms of how we set up Minnesota for the future, we absolutely need to recognize that climate change is our top issue. And if we don't address that with the urgency of the moment now, we won't have a state left. I mean, we just look at the horrible impacts of Hurricane Helene that folks are dealing with in North Carolina. Minnesota is not immune to the high variance that in our weather patterns that come with climate change. And so the time for urgent action is now. Over the last 2 years, Minnesota passed 100% clean energy standard by 2050 or 2040. And so we need to move towards getting to 100% clean energy. And so we're taking steps to do that. And so making sure that we're reducing barriers to increase production of the clean energy that we need is critical. I want to mention housing policy again, because it's vital that we reduce CO2 emissions, and the number one source of CO2 emissions is transportation, our cars. And we need to build smarter when it comes to our homes and make sure that we're building more housing opportunities for folks with access to transit. And we need to reduce sort of the sprawl that causes much more traffic. And so it's an area where I think sometimes get missed when some folks might not exactly square housing policy with climate policy, but the two are essential, and there are a multitude of ways we can take action on both at the same time.
Thank you. The next question actually deals with housing. It's maybe a chance for you to elaborate further on your answers with housing, but what measures would you support for more housing?
I'm loving this forum so far. In housing, I want to start by saying again, in Minnesota, we are more than 100,000 units short of the homes we need. That's both homes to rent and homes to own. And this fundamental gap in housing is what's driving up the cost of rents, making it impossible for young families to find a starter home, making it harder for seniors to downsize and find single-level living. So we just have a multitude of challenges, and the answer is we need to build more homes of all types, of all kinds, all across the state. I want to talk about two ways we need to do it. First, we need public investment. This last session, we've, for the first time, passed a significant investment in housing, $1 billion that will help us build more homes, provide rental assistance for folks, and address some of our challenges across the timeline. But this is the first time we've ever invested in housing like this. I went around the Capitol for 2 years holding up a gallon jug of water and making the point that if our entire state budget was this gallon jug of water, we were spending less than a tablespoon on housing. And when that's so vital for all of us, it is just out of whack. And so a lot of the $1 billion we passed last year was one time, which means we need to come back again and find a dependable long-term revenue source that will fund the kinds of housing, especially the affordable housing, that if not for public investment would not be built. The second thing we need to do is eliminate exclusionary zoning and modernize our systems and reduce barriers for both the private sector, and the public sector to build more homes. This is an area where, in some instances, the government can get out of the way, and we need to unlock the freedom of Minnesotans to be able to buy the kinds of homes they desperately want at the price that they can afford.
Thank you. The next question deals with bonding. There wasn't a bonding bill passed by the last session of the legislature. Do you support a bonding bill this session?
Absolutely. It was a disappointment that we weren't able to pass a bonding bill last year. This is into the how a bill becomes a law piece with bonding. It's a little different. In that bonding, you don't just need a 50% or above vote to pass a bonding bill. It's in our state constitution that you need a 2/3 vote, which with our current makeup in the legislature requires it to be bipartisan. And unfortunately, the Republicans in the Minnesota House and Senate refused to even entertain the idea of passing a bonding bill last session, and that's unfortunate. In Richfield here, 2 years ago, we were successful at getting some bonding resources for Wood Lake Nature Center, which is vital. And the next project that here in the city of Richfield they're looking for is resources to help with the Nicollet Avenue construction. And so I will be advocating strongly for a bonding bill and inclusion of our local projects in Richfield. There's also an important project at Boston Field in Minneapolis that is a high priority. And so, you know, capital investments or a bonding bill, or I think of it's just like your home. You know, you take out a 30-year mortgage on your home, and if you let things go too long in terms of your rehab needs and things like that, things deteriorate. And a capital investment is a way to protect our public investments into the future. So it's wise investments to make that always pay off in the long term. And so I'm hopeful that when we come back next year, we can work together in a bipartisan fashion to get it done.
Thank you. The last question from the league is, should state funds be used to support Hennepin County Medical Center rather than Hennepin County taxpayers paying the whole bill?
It's a good question. We need to make sure that our healthcare systems are strong and functioning. And what I want to say in particular on healthcare overall is that we have a broken healthcare system. And we have a system that is too weighted towards corporate and big profits versus just a system where healthcare is a right for folks to afford. And so in general, what we need to do in healthcare is move towards a system that I support, a single-payer healthcare system, where we get away from treating healthcare as a profit engine and more as a human right. Now, that is easier said than done and takes multiple steps, including starting by passing a true public option for folks to buy into affordable health insurance. And the reason I mention all this is some of the challenges that hospitals like HCMC face is providing a lot of uncompensated care from folks that have either no health insurance or very limited health insurance, and that creates financial challenges for a hospital. And so overall, I think we need to look at the whole healthcare system and try to work on reforms that strengthen our ability to have a system going forward where everyone can afford their health care.
Okay, thank you. We did get a question via email from someone for the forum, And this is a question from the audience. We'll start with this one as the first one. Pain is a major healthcare expense, and non-drug pain management options should be considered. Currently, acupuncture is covered by some insurance companies, but not all. Would you support a bill that mandates insurance coverage for acupuncture as a treatment for pain? And if not, why?
I'm very open to this, and I've worked on issues related to insurance reform, and too often we do have insurance companies deciding not to cover things, again, back to a healthcare system that has too much of a profit motive at the center. For example, this last year, it was successful in passing a bill that would mandate coverage at an affordable price for asthma inhalers, EpiPens, and insulin for insurance providers. I'm also the author of a bill that would require that insurance companies cover treatment of obesity, which has become an increasing way that insurance companies are finding ways to short people. And so I would love to learn more about acupuncture. I know folks that have used it, and it is a very successful tool to manage pain. And in general, I want patients and their doctors to be making these decisions for what's right, and not having insurance companies get in the way or get in the middle of what should be decisions based with patients and doctors. For me, anytime an insurance company comes in and has their say that affects a various treatment, that means something isn't working. And so this is an instance that requires that kind of look at the legislature to see if we need to look at a mandate reform with insurance companies.
Okay, thank you. We have several questions from the audience, and I'll be randomly picking them to ask. This question deals with public education. How will you support public education and bring more educators into the field?
It's a great question. I'll start by what we did these last 2 years, which is provide the largest funding increase we ever have for our public schools. And we focused a lot of those investments on, one, just the general education formula, two, helping to reduce but not completely eliminate the special education cross-subsidy, and three, invest resources in literacy, which is a huge issue that we must address to make sure that all of our kids are prepared to read. But what I'd say is we can't have one good session can't make up for decades, frankly, of underinvestment in our public education system. So we need to do more. Something we did last year was to peg education increases to inflation, which is important. It means if it's harder for a new legislature to come and put the brakes on when we know that each year schools are going to face inflationary increases. We should be making sure that we're not falling behind each time. And I mentioned the special education cross-subsidy. That's an area where I believe we need to fully close that. And what that means is that all of our schools are providing special education for our kids, but we don't fund our schools to fully to do that. So that creates an unfunded mandate for our schools, and they're going to have to wrestle that with their budgets in some way. We should fully fund special education in our schools. And so that's critical. In terms of our teachers, we ask so much of our teachers. I support a bill that would help increase beginning pay for our teachers to help get young teachers. And I also support efforts to continue looking for ways to make sure that we have diverse teachers that match the communities that they serve. We have gaps there. We mentioned racial inequities. That's an area that requires our further looking at as well.
Okay, thank you. This question has to do with crime. How can we reduce juvenile crimes? Do we need more officers to turn their lives around? More facilities to turn their lives around?
It's a great question and a challenging one. But I would say what we need to do is take a holistic view and help strengthen families. And that means from birth to 18, the whole shebang, right? And that means investing in quality, affordable childcare so that kids have the ability to grow and be ready to start school. It also means investing in housing. I know I keep chatting about it, but if families and kids have a safe, stable home, that will do so much more to set them up for success. I've talked with so many families, that because of their housing instability, are moving from school to school or on couches. And that instability for kids creates adverse effects and traumas that we know are linked to challenges later on. So overall, we need to understand that affordable childcare is a solution to public safety. Affordable housing is a solution to public safety. Investing in our schools is a solution. The part of the question asked about law enforcement, we absolutely do need to support and invest in quality law enforcement and do things that build community trust with law enforcement and our families. But when I think about ways to attack this issue, I want to start at the beginning and make investments to help families with young kids be successful, because I think that is what will help pay off in the long run in terms of making sure that more of our kids are set up for success.
Thank you. This question has to do with traffic. Do you support traffic safety cameras that can help enforce speed and light rules without a police roadside stop?
It's a good question. And I think that the devil's in the details on this. There's a lot of science that says utilization of these kinds of cameras can help reduce speeds that cause accidents. It also can reduce the number of interactions that our law enforcement officers are having with community members that can sometimes cause challenges, and it reduces some stress on our police officers. But there's also there's a civil liberties argument about taking photographs of folks as they're driving and how we implement it the right way. And so it's one where the details of how we do this matter and are important. I'll admit that it's persuasive to me, the idea that a policy like this could help us save lives. But it's just how we do it in the matter of getting the details right so that we're balancing the sort of the broader public safety goals also with the civil liberties of individuals.
Thank you. This question deals with cannabis. Do you support any changes to the current state cannabis legislation to make the rollout of legalization more orderly?
First, I was a strong supporter of passing cannabis legalization. I think it's an idea whose time had come, and it was important that we regulate something that was happening, stop the black market, and put some proper regulation around the program. Now, it's a big effort to do this, and it's important to do it the right way, which is why when we passed it, we didn't have an effective date that was like tomorrow, here we go, right? It's been very intentional to allow the time for this program to get set up. So I'm open to changes and listening to the communities and know that a lot of work is happening to kind of do that. We also built in flexibility in the law to make sure we have the ability to get it right. And so overall, I think we have the time to continue to work on implementation. And if there are small areas where we need to sort of go back in and tweak based on the feedback we're hearing from communities, we have the space to do that. And that's why it was so valuable to give enough runway for us so that we implement this well and in a way that works well for everybody.
Thank you. And this question deals with gun safety. What more can we do to improve gun safety to make it more safe for children and teens and adults?
It's a great question, and I know it's one where the League of Women Voters here has done a lot of work over the years. First, what we did these last 2 years, finally, we took action on universal background checks and extreme risk protection orders or red flag laws. So Minnesota has joined states that have stronger background check laws to ensure that if you purchase a gun, you must go through a background check, and getting rid of a gun show loophole. And extreme risk protection will help and have worked in other states to reduce instances where folks that shouldn't have a gun are gaining access. It's also a tool to help get guns out of the hands of folks that might use it for self-harm. To me, those felt like bare minimum laws, that it's too bad that it took this long to pass them because they're so common sense and with so much evidence. 2 things we can do that I support. One is safe storage laws. We can do more to expand our safe storage laws so that guns are kept safe in homes. We know that guns not kept properly is a huge reason why young people get their hands on guns and or horrible tragedies have taken place. So there's a safe storage law that would help address that. The second thing is I support limits on these weapons of war that are often the weapons that are used in these horrible mass tragedies in schools and in communities. Anytime one of them happen, it just takes about, you just don't even have to wait. You know that it's an AR-15, right? Every single time. And there are things that states can and should do to limit these weapons of war. These aren't weapons that are needed to hunt or to protect. They're weapons designed and intended to cause mass destruction. And we, as the legislature, should fight for folks and regulate them.
Thank you. This question deals with teens and children, I think. Let's see. Would you support the state building a new version of the Hennepin County homeschool, especially for younger teens committing crimes requiring secure placements? This question may have come up from the recent report, I think just yesterday, of a 10-year-old who had stolen a car and driven through a playground. So that's the question.
We had my answer would be similar to the question, where we need to provide more supports for our families and for our kids to make sure that they're healthy and thriving, hopefully in stable homes. But if that's not the case, we do need to invest in programs where they can find community and a haven to learn and to grow. And so I'm very supportive of investments of programming that's out of school or in school. We need to be making sure that we're having those wraparound services that are integrated into communities so that kids and families have access to resources, especially if, for whatever reason, they're not sort of getting that level of support at home.
This question is, do you support renewal of the Environment and Natural Resources Trust Fund?
Yes, I do. And for folks to understand, this will be a question soon on the ballot about whether we want to extend the Environmental Natural Trust Fund resources that have been so vital to protect our natural resources all across the state. I think one thing that we can all agree on is that an asset of Minnesota is our clean drinking water, our beautiful landscapes all across the state. We need to protect our outdoors. It's so critical to what makes us Minnesotans and our identity. And we had a conversation about climate change. We can't just expect that our environment will be protected without investment and without intention. And so I support extending the trust fund. It'll help us provide the resources we need across the state to keep Minnesota the wonderful, amazing place it is.
Thank you. This question has to deal with your background and experience. Are there significant early life events that helped form your views on politics and legislation?
Yeah, so I would say a couple things I would say. I grew up the son of a elementary special education teacher, and that shaped for me a deep belief that we need to care for everybody, but especially folks that might need a little extra support, and that we should always resist the urge to other people just because they might be different. And that ability to sort of put yourselves in the shoes of others is something that is ingrained deeply in me, and I think we need more of in our politics, and led me towards public service when I've seen areas where that isn't the case. The second thing I would say is in college, I interned on Senator Paul Wellstone's campaign in 2002, and that was incredibly formative for me. That was my first actual time working on a political campaign, and seeing Paul and his ability to connect with people, and the energy and engagement and hope in a politics that's about organizing together and fighting for the common good for everyone resonated so deeply for me. And I knew that I wanted to have vocation in an area that would help improve the lives of others. And Paul Wellstone showed me that that place can be politics. And so those two things were guiding forces. And, it's joyful for me to see that, Paul has been gone for more than 20 years now, but we see evidence of his leadership everywhere, all across our state still today.
Thank you. This question has to deal with gambling. What is your position on expansion of gambling at Canterbury Downs?
Specifically, I'm wondering if this question is related to the proposal to allow for sports gambling, which has been at the legislature. On that front, I would say that I am a supporter. I believe that it's an area where the cat is out of the bag, so to speak. People are engaging in this activity or going to other states to do so in a black market. And so there's, I think, virtue in creating a regulated market here in Minnesota. I would say it's important to me that we do this in a way that respects our long-time agreements with our tribes across the state. So I do not support expanding sports gambling at Canterbury Park or the horse tracks. The only thing I'd mention on the sports gambling piece is, although I'm a supporter, I will say that the ubiquitousness of the advertising in ways that the large companies are seeking more support for sports gambling does trouble me. And I think that as we draft the law, we need to look for ways to sort of guard against some of the addictive gambling issues that can be really destructive for families. So it's tricky, but I think it's one that requires a little more attention as we look to the next legislative session.
Thank you. This question deals with zoning and housing. On exclusionary zoning, parking minimums, and other land use rules, how do you balance cities' need for local control with a statewide need for more housing?
It's a good question. We went like 4 questions in a row where I couldn't talk about housing, so I appreciate we get another housing question. It's an important question because cities and the state have a vested interest in housing. What I would say is we need to find ways to work in partnership. But what's clear to me is that no one city can solve this housing crisis on their own. A city like Richfield here has enacted really important reforms designed to help us build more homes. They've made it easier to build duplexes, restricted or made it easier, ease some of the parking pieces. And that's positive. We want to reward innovation and allow cities to innovate. That said, there's a lot of cities that still have policies that are incredibly exclusionary, that lead to only the kinds of homes that are accessible for millionaires. We cannot have a state where you need to be extremely wealthy to own a single-family home. And we have communities where they're only building on enormous lots and enormous McMansions and have restrictive, exclusionary policies in place that make it harder to build the homes that Minnesotans want. And so the people that are most important to me in this conversation aren't, frankly, city officials or state officials. It's Minnesotans. And if we listen to Minnesotans, what they want is more freedom and more choices. And so it's a tough balance, but I believe what we need to do is raise the floor so that all across the state we're making it easier for the kinds of homes that Minnesotans want to be built, but also to work in partnership and reward innovation in cities like Richfield that are doing this right and doing it the right way.
Thank you. This is a long question dealing with energy. What does 100% clean energy mean in terms of practical changes in our homes? Will this remove our home gas stoves, water heaters, etc.? If our personal vehicles must be exclusively electric, we will lose the ability to travel long distances in a single day and will be forced to travel only between charging ports. How can this be addressed in a practical and affordable way? It doesn't seem realistic by 2040.
It's a good question. I agree that it wouldn't be realistic today, but I don't know if I would agree that it's not realistic by 2040. If we make this commitment now and build towards getting there. Technology is changing rapidly. Just imagine 3, 4, 5 years ago even, what we would think about in terms of the proliferation of electric cars and the distances they can travel. And so you can't accomplish big things without setting big goals. And that's why I think it's so vital to set those big goals with the Clean Energy Standard and work intentionally on a trajectory to get there. And so those concerns are very valid, and we need to, along the process, make sure that we address them so that we're doing things that will help us get to clean energy 100% and also make sure that families can sort of succeed economically and otherwise. I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think we can do both, and we have the time, resources, and ingenuity to make it happen.
Thank you. This has to do with the Richfield proposed half-cent sales tax. Do you support the 3 Richfield referendums which will repair and replace and improve the Richfield Nature Center, Community Center, and Veterans Park?
Enthusiastically, yes. It is vital to have a community where families and the public can thrive. And I'll just tick all three of those. Something I appreciate about the question is that we're investing in three absolutely valuable and things that families all across our community use. Wood Lake Nature Center is an absolute gem for families, and not just in Richfield, but across the region. Our son Calvin did a bird camp at Wood Lake Nature Center this year, and it's fostering his love of birds. We go outside, and he knows more about birds than anyone in our family now. It's really exciting. And that building at Wood Lake is literally falling apart. To make the investment now, it makes economic sense because it's just going to get more expensive, and we need to protect that asset. A community center, that is a piece in Richfield that is needed. I've thought it's been needed for years. Of course, we do have a community center, but I always put it kind of in air quotes because it's doing a lot of work to call that a community center. To have a real space, a convening space, a meeting space for folks to be together in community as families. It helps answer some of that question about keeping our kids safe and on track as well. When I talk to folks in the community, they are thrilled about the prospect of a community center here in Richfield. And then addressing the needs at our community pool. Boy, after a summer like this, I think, can you imagine going through a summer without that pool being open and accessible? For our family, that wouldn't work too well. And so these are three incredibly valuable and specific investments. And at a half-cent increase, I believe that's something that all of us here in Richfield can see the virtue in making. And so I would encourage folks to vote yes.
Thank you. This question deals with mining. What is your position about allowing mining near the BWCA, Boundary Waters Canoe Area?
I strongly oppose it. Our boundary waters are an incredible asset to Minnesota that we need to protect. The thought of potentially disrupting or allowing for unsafe mining near the boundary waters is, I can't think even the right word for how foolish that would be. We've seen so many examples of the type of mining being considered there going wrong. And when it goes wrong forever, for hundreds of years. There's no going back. And to think about trusting in, a multinational corporation to mine near the boundary waters, is something that we simply cannot support. And so I'm supportive of looking at the tools we have at the legislature and working with our federal partners to make sure that we are protecting our boundary waters. To me, it's there's some issues where you can sort of see the virtue of the other side and work together, but this is a hard line. We need to make sure that we protect our boundary waters here in Minnesota.
Thank you. This again is a question about housing. How will you support affordable housing options for seniors across a continuum of care?
It's a great question. It goes back to that we need to do two things at once. First, we need to invest public resources to build more homes. In particular, affordable senior housing projects, we know there's a huge need. The economics, how they worked, especially at the lowest income levels, you need public subsidy to make sure that those projects are pencil out, so to speak, so that developers can build them. And so through more public investment, that will unlock the creation of more homes. And then back to the conversation about making sure that we're making it easier to build homes, what I see as a huge need is things like accessory dwelling units, townhomes on single levels, a little bit smaller footprint homes. In a lot of cities, it's illegal to build homes like that. We need to legalize ADUs everywhere. We need to make it much easier to build single-level townhomes. And so that's going to help us, one, have more supply of housing, which is going to help reduce costs for everybody. And two, those are the exact kinds of homes that we don't have right now. And because we don't have them, it they become incredibly unaffordable. It's economics 101, supply demand. And so we need to be in yes and mode when it comes to public investments and policy reforms. And the good news is these solutions work. We have evidence from across the country in areas that are making policy change to allow for more housing to be built. We know these things can work, and so we absolutely should take advantage here in Minnesota as well.
Okay, thank you. We just have time now for your closing statement, so 2 minutes for that. And thank you for fielding all these questions by yourself, essentially.
Yep, thank you for the opportunity. This is the first time I've done one of these where it's just me up here, so it has felt like rapid fire. I have really appreciated all the ground we've got to cover in just an hour here today, and again want to thank the League for organizing this forum and for all the folks that asked such a great round of questions. As I began, I'm running for re-election because I have such a strong belief in the power of this community to do good, and to stick up for one another, and to stand shoulder to shoulder to make this community a better place. I've seen that in my time on the city council and in my few terms here in the legislature. And if the last 2 years at the legislature has taught me anything, it's that when you set a vision for the future, when you center the challenges that regular Minnesotans are facing, and really fight to get things done, you can do big things that make a difference. And I'm ready to keep working on those things together with all of you. We can create a future where all families have access to affordable childcare. We can create a future where we have housing abundance and Minnesotans can find a home to rent or to buy in the community that they choose. We can create a healthcare system that centers people, not profits. We can do these things. Some of them are hard. Some of them are going to take more than 1 year. But through the power of community organizing and working in partnership with the legislature, I believe as strongly as I ever have that we can make our community and state a better place. And so I'd encourage folks to go vote. And vote up and down the ballot from top all the way to the bottom, and certainly don't skip that question we talked about for Richfield. We have exciting and hopeful times ahead, and I look forward to doing that work with all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike, for that. You handled it well, and I really appreciate it. So now we are going to we're going to switch off here. We've got our city council candidates that will be coming forward. We've got to change a couple nameplates up here, but we'll be back about 10:15 for the next round of questions. Thank you, Mike, so much. Okay, if candidates would, we're waiting for one of our last candidate, but if you take a seat. I don't know where you are. That's okay. No problem. Hang on. We're flexible here. Okay, it's a little past 10:15. I think it's time to get started. And again, I say good morning to people that have been here before, and welcome to the League of Women Voters of Richfield's Candidate Forum 2024. My name is Susan Rosenberg, and I am president of the Richfield chapter. I want to thank you for coming to learn more about our local candidates, and also to the candidates to take time from your busy schedule to participate in this very important event. The League of Women Voters does not support or oppose candidates for public office or political parties. Candidate forums follow the unbiased and impartial format established and published by the League of Women Voters of Minnesota and the League of Women Voters of Richfield. All events are free and open to the public and media. We on the League of Women Voters of Richfield believe that an informed and educated voter is a better voter. That is why we sponsor these forums, such as the one that's going to be taking place, and participate in community events such as PennFest. The League has always been a strong voice for democracy and voters' rights. The candidates for Richfield City Council is Walter Burke and Brett Sturser. They are vying for Ward 1. Incumbent Sean Hayford O'Leary. He doesn't have an opponent, but he's here to give us his answers to these questions. And Rory Coleman Woods in Ward 3. Thank you all for coming, and I really, this will be a really good forum. Donna Drummond is our member of the League of Women Voters of Richfield, an experienced moderator, and will moderate the forum. She will explain procedures and manage the rotation of speakers. The forum will be video recorded in its entirety and will be online at a later date. It is now being streamed through the Richfield channel as well as Richfield's YouTube channel. Time limits for all comments will be strictly enforced. In fairness to all candidates and the audience, we ask that these limits be respected. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for opening remarks to introduce themselves. The moderator will then ask questions from the League of Women Voters Richfield and follow up with questions from the audience. So that we can address as many questions as possible in the time available, City Council candidates and because of time constraints, we'll have 1 minute to answer the question. If time permits, each candidate will have 2 minutes for our closing statement. Karen Jenkins, a member of the League of Women Voters of Richfield, is the timer, and she will hold up signs to indicate when you have 15 seconds and then when you must stop. All candidates will rotate in the order in which they respond. Voters attending the forum may submit written questions to the candidates and will be accepted throughout the forum. League members will be moving around the room with blank cards and writing instruments so the members of the audience can submit questions. All questions are reviewed by League of Women Voters members to ensure that questions are applicable to all candidates, are forward-looking, not personal, and are addressed to subjects relevant to this forum. All questions remain the property of the League of Women Voters of Richfield. Campaign literature, buttons, signs, clothing, or any other campaign-related items must not be brought into this room. However, there has been a table that has been designated so the candidates could leave place for their campaign materials. So with that, I will turn this over to Donna Drummond. She will start the questioning, and we look forward to a nice, really good, informative forum.
Thank you, Susan. We'll start out with introductions. You'll each have 2 minutes to introduce yourselves, and we'll just go in the order that you're seated for this question. For subsequent questions, we have a random number generator that you'll kind of randomly start first, and so you're not always following the same person. So we'll start with Mr. Burke.
Some involvement in city government. I was the former chair of the Richfield Human Rights Commission, and during that time, Simon was the liaison with the city council. And during that time, he noticed the accomplishments that I was getting and making at the Human Rights Commission. And we had some conversations, and we learned we had a number of things in common. We are both Puerto Rican. We are both attorneys, and we both have children. But he learned a lot more about me. He learned that I had dedicated my legal career after graduating from the University of Minnesota in 2000, dedicated my legal career to public service. I've always worked either in government or in nonprofits or legal aid, and I continue to do so today. I'm a staff attorney, supervising attorney at a nonprofit that helps veterans out of homelessness. And he noticed that that commitment to public service also extended to my work at legal aid, working with people who cannot afford attorneys, and then learning of a wide variety of things. I learned about the struggles that people have today. People are struggling with mortgage foreclosure issues and landlord-tenant issues, consumer credit issues. Simon thought that it would be a good idea for the city council to have someone with that background and experience on city council. So he asked me twice, and the second time I said yes. And I'm very happy that I did. I've learned a great deal in this process. The other thing I've learned in my legal career is that even though you may be given 2 minutes, that doesn't mean you have to use the 2 minutes. But it seems like I'm pretty close to being out of time anyway. And I hope to continue this conversation as things go on and tell you more about myself. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Sturza?
Hi, thanks League of Women Voters for hosting this forum today, and thank you all for being here. Thanks for all of you who are watching at home. I am Brett Sturza, and I'm running for Richfield City Council Ward 1. I'm currently serving my second term on the Richfield Planning Commission, and prior to that, I served 2 terms on the Richfield Human Rights Commission, both as a commissioner and as a chair. Over those 4 years, I learned a lot about local government and the city of Richfield, and can use that experience to put values into policy. My priorities are sustainability, affordability, and inclusion. By sustainability, I mean we must be prepared for a changing environment. I support the city's climate action plan, planting more trees. All actions, big and small, are required for this planetary health crisis. By inclusion, I mean that we need to ensure that all members of the community have a voice at the table, and we must consider how our actions affect everyone in the city. Affordability has been the top priority that I've heard while door knocking. It's both low-income and middle-income families that are struggling with the cost of housing. I support building more affordable housing, and I support making home ownership more accessible. Professionally, I work at the University of Minnesota School of Nursing and Communications, where I am lucky enough to tell the stories of nurse educators, students, and researchers. I moved to Richfield in 2013, first as a renter and then as a homeowner. And my mom grew up in Richfield, so we spent a lot of weekends visiting my grandma over at Russell. Now, both my sisters, families, and I live within 5 minutes of one another, so I'm deeply invested in the future of Richfield. Thank you, and I'm looking forward to the conversation today.
Thank you. Mr. Hayford O'Leary?
Thank you, and thanks to the League of Women Voters of Richfield for hosting this again. I moved to Richfield in 2012, and I think I've been to every one of these, at least since 2014 or so. But despite running for my second term, this is my first time actually doing it in the regular way, because 2020 was quite a different setup. I am finishing my first term on the Richfield City Council for Ward 2, and I'm running for my second currently. I moved here in 2012. I currently serve on the Housing and Redevelopment Authority in addition to the City Council, and then I serve as a council liaison to Metro Cities, which is a regional board, Richfield Transportation Commission, which is of course the commission that advises us on transportation issues, and 35W Solutions, which is another regional board. This is kind of a unique situation this year for me without an opponent, but I'm sort of grateful for the opportunity to use this time, in addition to my normal connecting with voters, to be able to talk about other issues that are important to me. So in particular, I've been involved in advocating favorable passage of the Parks referendum, having served as both a treasurer for that group as well as helping lead on some of the communications. In my day job, I do communications and graphic and web design, so you'll find my work on both the Parks flyer and the Sean flyer out there. Being a council member means being a jack of all trades. I've had to learn a lot of things in my first term, things like how a city budget works. Obviously, I had some of the ideas, but you just learn so much more as you actually practice and do the work. But I've particularly been able to deliver on some of my own passion areas. Those are really transportation and development and housing related. Some of the things that I want to note from the first term I'm really proud of. Next week we'll be reviewing a preliminary layout for Nicollet Avenue. I've been involved every step of the way on that, working with the Transportation Commission, working with the public at open houses, and I'm really proud of the design that staff and city officials have come up with. I strive to be an excellent communicator and be transparent about my thinking. A lot of people know me for my online postings and trying to explain things, and I hope to continue to bring that transparency to my second term. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Coleman Woods?
Good morning, League of Women Voters. I appreciate this opportunity. Again, my name is Rory Coleman Woods. I am your candidate for City Council in Ward 3. I see a lot of familiar faces, so I'm happy to answer all the questions today. I was encouraged to run by always a safe place for us, even in tough times. Richfield holds so many memories for me and our family. I had my 16th birthday party at the Richfield pool, and to family gatherings at the Legion Post 435. My best college roommate was my grandmother, and while I was attending the University of Minnesota, Twin Cities, as a commuter. My grandmother always made me feel like it was, that this was a city that I could actually be involved in. I currently sit on the Charter City Commission, and I've sat on the Richfield Friendship City Commission, and a host of other organizations throughout the city. So I'm excited for this opportunity to continue to answer questions.
Thank you. For this first question, you've covered some of this in your answers already, but if you'd like to elaborate on any point, why are you running for office? What are your qualifications, and what will be your major priorities if elected? For this question, we'll start with Mr. Hayford O'Leary, and then we'll follow with Mr. Burke.
Thank you. And we do have 1 minute for these questions, right?
1 minute, yes.
Thank you. Yeah, in terms of why I first ran, I first got involved in Richfield after I moved here related to bicycle advocacy. I think the further I got into it and the more I got to know the way cities work, I realized that you kind of can't just advocate for one thing to have a successful and prosperous city. It all works together. Development works together, city budgets so we can afford to support the things that we want to do are really important. And it's been, you know, in addition to my specific passion areas of development and streets, it's just been a privilege, and it's been exciting to help make government more transparent, to help people understand the importance of what city government does in their lives, and to help bring their ideas forward. That's been really, really helpful, and it's just great to see more people connected, more people feeling really positive about the direction the city's taken.
Thank you. Mr. Burke?
For example, I was able to I created, and they still do these legal advice clinics. They're free advice clinics that are done in the city, trying to get local attorneys to give free legal advice to members of the public. And also I brought a legal kiosk. It's a freestanding computer. It's in a room across the hall that allows the public to get free court forms. They can get free legal advice. They can even attend court hearings by remote if they don't have a computer at home. And the best thing about that legal kiosk is it was no cost to the city. The only cost was to provide electricity, some printer paper, and hook it up to the internet. Also, some other changes I'll talk about later. Thank you.
Thank you.
As I said, I've learned I don't need a full minute. That's okay. Usually I get to choose, though.
Okay, now we'll go to Ms. Coleman Woods.
After years of being on the Charter City Commission, I've figured out how to navigate some of the systems and how the city makes its rules for governing itself. And part of our priorities for our campaign are that we are making sure that people who are underrepresented or undervalued in our community have a safe place to call home, but also that they see representation like in our city council, so that we, looks like our city people, our city community members. And our diversity calls for a broader understanding of how we treat each other. And I think that it is important for people like myself to get involved in our community and to make space for, advancing ourselves.
Thank you. Ms. Sturza?
Thanks. I'm running because of the experience I have. With 4 terms, like I mentioned in my opening statement, I learned a lot about local government, and I think that experience is crucial to being able to lead on day one. I love the direction the city is headed. I have applauded the work of the council in the last 4 years, and I want to make sure the work of the council and city staff. I want to make sure that we continue that progress, and so that's why I decided to step up. I also believe that we need to have really strong representation. I feel like I am an excellent listener with my background in communications and a background as a community journalist. I listen to differing opinions and can advocate when needed. Thank you.
Thank you. For this next question, we'll start with Ms. Coleman Woods. Minnesota has stark racial inequities in income, education, and home ownership. What are your ideas for reducing and eliminating these inequities?
Well, I think that that's a complicated issue that I think that a lot of our community members are dealing with. We are all struggling to afford to continue to live here in Richfield. I think that there's a large majority of people who've either grown up here, who've been lifers, who want to continue to stay here. And part of that is making sure that we can afford it. And I think that being a member of the city council can help me continue to drive costs down in terms of how much we're paying for things or how much our city's paying for things so that we can continue to afford to live here. With a growing family of teenage boys, I think that it is becoming more expensive to raise our kids as well. So kind of doing 2 things at once to try to fight back against how expensive things are and how to keep affording things.
Thank you. Ms. Sturza?
I think reducing inequity is a complicated issue. I think putting information into the hands of more residents is important. And I think that we need to examine all of the city's policies through an equity lens. I know that they've been doing that in the last couple of years. We need to continue to do that and refine that process. I also think that we need to be open to difficult conversations. It's something that I've experienced on the Planning Commission. Having difficult public conversations can be difficult, but I think that they're important to understanding the different perspectives. And I think it's very important that all members of the community feel like they have a voice at the table. So I want to make sure that we're making space for that. And then also thinking about the people who aren't at the table, why they're not there, and considering how our decisions are impacting everyone in the city.
Thank you. Mr. Burke?
So some economic ways to address the inequities in housing. One is, again, focusing on more affordable housing. The more housing you have, the more affordable it becomes. You have more competition. As far as focusing on home ownership, there are things that Richfield already does. Community land trusts that allow people who cannot afford to purchase both the property and the home. It allows them to focus on purchasing the home, and the trust actually owns the home, the property until later on that they can be purchased by the homeowner. But as far as the overall environment of welcoming and greeting others from diverse backgrounds, one thing the city is doing is diversifying the police force, for example. And the police and other people who are out there in the public from the city, they are the face of the city. And if you can continue to diversify and have people from different backgrounds in the police force, fire force, and other representatives of the city, that will be more welcoming to people.
Thank you. Mr. Hayford O'Leary?
Thank you. I think everyone's touched on housing. I agree that is very important, and I will just add to the comments that have already been made. I think it's important that we have different housing choices distributed throughout the community. I think one of our difficult legacies is having sort of all our affordable small apartments in one area, and you create de facto economic and racial segregation because of that. That's something we need to work on. I will also say with policies in general, we have an equity coordinator. We have been doing policy review. But I also just want to note, I think one of the most successful examples we did of applying an equity lens to a policy that doesn't feel like it's about racial equity was our snow plowing policy. And I'm really proud of the changes we made. They were common sense changes. But I also want to recognize that hitting the doors this season, I still get complaints about it. Doing actual meaningful equity work means changing the way the status quo is working, and that means ruffling feathers and creating some inconvenience for people who have not been inconvenienced in the past. So I think it's important work, but it's a little bit of a reminder that it's a long road to really turn the ship.
Okay, thank you. For the next question, we'll start with Ms. Sturza. How can the City Council encourage more residential, business, especially restaurant and grocery store, and multi-housing recycling and compostable recycling?
In terms of how we can encourage more recycling in general, I think that communication is key. I think that sustainability is a priority for a lot of people. I think how we have to partner with county and state partners in order to encourage recycling. We have such high recycling rates with home owners because the state incentivizes that. I think we also need to incentivize and support that kind of those kind of partnerships in grocery stores, restaurants, and other businesses as well.
Thank you. Mr. Hayford O'Leary?
Thank you. One of the big accomplishments early in my term that was mostly done by my predecessors, but I was proud to bring over the finish line, was organized hauling citywide for single-family homes and duplexes. That's made a huge difference, both in affordability for homeowners, but also bringing up rates of recycling and organics participation, which was a service that was not widely available before. I support continuing that program. I support continuing to make it cost no extra for participating in organics, and I think that is impactful. In terms of larger entities like grocery stores, restaurants, I do think mandates and directions from the county are very helpful, and I would like to see us be able to offer similar programs to apartment buildings. I also want to add, because this has been an interest of Richfield, I am hopeful that we are able to find a way to continue to use the Hennepin Energy Recovery Center for trash that cannot be recycled or landfilled, or excuse me, recycled or composted. I think that's very impactful in reducing the impact compared to landfilling, and I'm hopeful that we're able to keep that open and eventually reach zero waste.
Thank you. Ms. Coleman Woods?
I am a full supporter for our organized hauling and composting and recycling. I think that the next generation of people that are coming up, even behind us, are probably more conscious of it than our current, like this current generation. So I think that people are very concerned about how we're going to continue that, and it is important for us to continue to make, I think, mandates, like Sean was saying, about how our restaurants and businesses operate here. Without that, I think that we won't reduce our carbon footprint as much as we're hoping. So I think that is something that we have to continue to make a strong point about, and that not just residents are participating in it, that businesses need to as well.
Thank you. Mr. Burke?
So some great answers already, but some specific answers of things that the city can do immediately to help reduce non-renewables is, for example, passing a law that prohibits the use of non-renewable bags in stores unless you pay a nickel. All the communities around us do it. Richfield doesn't. Let's do that. And another one is the use of non-compostable containers from restaurants. Again, we're surrounded by cities that require it. For some reason, Richfield hasn't done it yet, and that can be done next. So those are two quick answers, and I take no credit for that. This is from canvassing. These are some of the great things I've learned in canvassing, and so those are some immediate answers that could be taken care of.
Thank you. For this next question, we'll start with Ms. Coleman Woods. When considering redevelopment and revitalization in the city, such as the hub, how should the city take advantage of existing opportunities and promote or explore new opportunities?
And I am probably a novice at what I consider like the redevelopment of that area. I know that everybody wants to see something better out of that area, though. Something that people are going to continue to use over the next 10, 15 to 20 years, or for the next lifetime. The hub has been literally the hub of Richfield, and it's I would want to say that it's becoming outdated or underused, I think, if, for lack of a better term, that continues to attract new businesses that come in. I think that our city can do better in making sure that we have some businesses that are going to stay there for the long term, and that they're useful businesses for our city. That Richfield Rainbow Foods former location sounds like it's going to be another grocery store, which is great for our community. It seems like there's been a food desert all around us, except for so we've all had to go to neighboring cities to go grocery shopping.
Thank you. Ms. Sturza?
Yeah, I was excited to support the Loma Bonita application for the current or the old Rainbow site. I think that I'm glad to see the $4 million of improvements that will come and the better traffic flow that will come. But I would be lying if I didn't say that I was slightly disappointed that we are not going to see something more substantial in terms of redevelopment on that site. I think that we've dreamed big for the redevelopment on Hub. We've dreamed big for the redevelopment on Penn Avenue. I love those visions. I think in the next couple of years, we're going to begin a comprehensive plan update, and we need to make sure that those visions still meet what the community has envisioned for that area. And I'm excited to be a part of that process.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Burke?
I know the city has made efforts for a long time to persuade the owner of the hub area to do something greater, to do something more. When you drive down 66, then you see different sized housing along the way. It's amazing that all of a sudden there's this open spot perfect commercial spot where you could imagine affordable housing there, or you can imagine some other larger facilities there. That spot is made for that. It's a transit hub. So much more could be done there. But again, it's privately owned. And my understanding is the city has approached the owner numerous times on a repeated basis, and you have to keep making those efforts. And whether it's helping them with zoning or whatever else, there should be encouragement from the city, continued encouragement from the city to work with the owners to make something greater happen there.
Thank you. Mr. Hayford O'Leary?
Thank you. Yes, like Ms. Sturza, I share some disappointment in the fact that the hub wasn't coming with a larger vision. I think the city has been, frustrated in the lack of progress from that owner in particular, but also the current market that has slowed of new development in general. I think the best thing we've been able to do of sort of making lemons into lemonade with that situation is to make sure that we are shovel ready in every possible way for a redevelopment. So the 65th Street project was moved up specifically to get utilities out of the way of the hub site and to provide additional stormwater capacity to support redevelopment. The city has invested in improvements on 65th, on Nicollet, and 66 all around the site. And when we did have an opportunity for a new grocery store, we made sure that they were doing more than just throwing up a new sign and putting in a new tenant, but that they were making substantial improvements that would help make this a more integrated part of our downtown area. And do what they can within this minor redevelopment to really make it a useful grocery store for all.
Thank you. For the next question, we'll start with Mr. Burke. Many are concerned with increased crime in our communities. What can the City Council do to help reverse this current trend and respond to the need for safer communities?
We need a larger police force, and I know that there's been work by the city to expand the police force. There's been requests to add more police officers, but there are certainly alternatives, and I know the other candidates have spoken about this, that there are alternatives to just adding more police, that there are community safety officers who are more like social workers who can be first responders to situations that are not as initially violent or as seemingly as violent as they are. And perhaps it would be better to have someone who doesn't have a gun on them to make those initial appearances at certain situations. But I think there is also a need to add a police officer or two if the budget allows, but it should be balanced by, again, expanding these alternatives to a police force. Again, to have people who are more in tune with being more towards social work and to mediation skills and to be first responders in certain situations, to allow the police to focus on more violent situations.
Thank you. Mr. Hayford O'Leary?
Thank you. Well, I think the first thing that we need to always talk about with crime is making sure that the perceptions match the reality. And of course, crime occurs in Richfield, it's unacceptable, but it is fairly rare. We are a fairly safe community, and particularly with severe crimes, the Part 1 crimes like violence, those are down year over year, and I want to be sure that we get that message out. That doesn't mean there isn't more to do, of course. And I want to say, in addition to making sure that our police staffing is adequate, I want to be sure that we're making the best use out of that resource. In addition to being expensive to hire police officers, there's a very limited labor market, so we want to be sure that we're using their skills and their experience to the best way possible. So I would particularly like to see us move towards having traffic safety cameras to do some of the routine traffic enforcement that takes up officers' time for more important things. As well as making sure that police response is appropriate. So when we can use community service officers to do things like writing parking tickets, I'd rather have them spend that time and allow our police to focus on violent crime and more difficult issues.
Thank you. Ms. Coleman Woods?
I think that this is an important topic because it is something I think I agree with Sean with about that our perceptions match that perspective. I think some of our community members may see that maybe there's the opportunity for us to invest further in our police force, but I also think that there's a huge opportunity for us to create those alternative crisis response teams. And currently we're only staffed for one shift of that in Richfield, and I think that we could do better. We also share that staff with our neighboring cities, so I think we deserve to have one of our own, that is fully staffed for people that may not need a police officer with a gun right away. They may need somebody that is going to help de-escalate the situation.
Thank you. Ms. Sturza?
Yeah, I think everyone deserves to feel safe in the community. I think the preliminary 2025 budget includes significant investment in our police department, with the current funding calling for 2 additional police officers and an additional community service officer. I appreciate the leadership that our police department has shown in piloting programs like the embedded social worker and the alternative response team, and I hope that we can smartly grow those programs. I also think that community-led collaborations that foster trust are really important, and that collaborations that foster that sense of community are really important. That's something I heard time and time again, door knocking, is that I wish I knew my neighbors better. I remember knowing my neighbors' names, and I think anything we can do to foster that sense of community is really important.
Thank you. For this next question, we'll start with Ms. Sturza. What is your position on the 3 referendums adding a half-cent sales and use tax?
Finally, an easy question. I absolutely support them. I enthusiastically support them. Everyone should support them. I think that Wood Lake is my favorite spot in the city. I love the Richfield pool. We've spent many a summer afternoon there. I think it only makes sense with Minneapolis, Bloomington, Edina, all of our neighbors, having a similar sales tax. It only makes sense that we do the same in Richfield. We have to invest for our future generations. It makes sense to do it as a sales tax so that not only Richfield residents, but anyone who's spending money in the city also supports that. And I also think that we need to be wise stewards of that investment. And I take that seriously. I think that we need to have an open process in how we do those improvements, and that we get a lot of community feedback as we do those improvements, but I'm very optimistic that we'll be doing those improvements.
Thank you. Ms. Coleman Woods?
I am absolutely excited about these 3 referendums. We are sports ball parents, and we have had, we've seen our city become that. Well, we've seen that our city's been passed up for hosting things like tournaments and, well, for the better lack of words, we didn't have a big enough space for our kids' graduation party this year. It could have been much better. The access to our facilities, I think, is needing to be improved, and it is something that we have to, I think, keep up with our neighboring cities, like Brett said, and really all 3 of the referendums, I think, are going to pass because this is such a high need for our community.
Thank you. Mr. Hayford O'Leary?
Thank you. Yes, I also support all 3 referenda, and I've been happy to talk with community members whenever I can about the importance of funding our parks adequately. And in fact, just a thank you to everyone at this dais for helping distribute our Yes for Parks literature along with their own campaign literature. It's great to see consensus, not just among people who are running for office in Richfield, but among most community members I'm talking to. People recognize the need. Not only is there a need for these specific facilities, there's just a need to help balance our parks funding in general. We have a lot of unmet need. This addresses the 3 biggest ticket items, not only helping those parks immediately, but also ensuring that the precious property tax dollars that we depend on, that are a sacrifice for homeowners, are able to go as far as possible to our other parks' needs as well. So I strongly support it, and I hope to see all 3 pass with a good margin.
Thank you. Mr. Burke?
So the last one to answer the question that we all agree on makes it really tough, but I'm going to try my best. The word I would use is iconic. When people who are not from Richfield think about Richfield, they think about Wood Lake. They think about that outdoor pool, and eventually they're going to think about the Richfield Community Center. These are the things that people outside of Richfield think about. These are the things that have been waiting for renovation from 40 up to 60 years. And I want people to be able to say, you know what, just as the people who created those institutions and places, when those people had the forethought to raise taxes or whatever they had to do to make those things built, I want people 30, 40, 50 years from now to say, this generation, these people, they had the foresight to do the same. We should take responsibility to make sure that those places get renovated, just like the people who created them. That's how important it is.
Thank you. We'll start with Mr. Hayford O'Leary for this next question. And this is the last question from the league, and then we'll go to audience questions. The City Council's chief responsibility is to set strategies for the city. What strategic initiatives would you push for?
Thank you for the question. I think a lot of what's been guiding our work is the strategic plan that we did that designated our goals for a 4-year period that was led in partnership with staff and directors. And it helped us focus on key things like building out our infrastructure, which continues to be important, building community development to grow Richfield. And that continues to guide us. It's been a helpful document to both contextualize the many ideas that we get and that we get from community. But it's helped us stay focused as a team, and I want to have that continued focused leadership going forward.
Thank you. Mr. Burke?
Would you repeat the question again?
The City Council's chief responsibility is to set strategies for the city. What strategic initiatives would you push for?
Well, as Sean mentioned, that there is a plan out there, and that continued involvement and encouragement to get citizen input is definitely important for the long-term strategic planning. And again, I think the city already has a process that allows for that, and it's been successful, and that process should continue.
Thank you. Ms. Durza?
Yeah, as I mentioned in my opening statement, my priorities are sustainability, affordability, and inclusion. So any initiatives within those spaces are going to be, I will enthusiastically support. I really appreciate the work that's been done on the city's strategic plan, specifically operational excellence. I don't think it's something that, like, when you hear of strategic plans, you think of, let's just make sure that, like, we're doing the work in City Hall the best that we can with employees who are happy to show up and proud of their work. And I would enthusiastically continue support on that. In terms of one initiative that I would like to take leadership on that's come up in the Planning Commission is the city's lack of a sidewalk policy. I think it's really important that we have policy and funding for sidewalks in the city.
Thank you. Ms. Coleman Woods?
I also agree that I think that continuing with the strategic plan that is currently in place is of pinnacle importance. And if I were to focus on one, I think it would be that our speed limits do need to come down. I live on Bloomington Avenue, which is the kids treat like a straightaway, and it's drag racing magnet. So I think that is my biggest concern, is that we do have that pedestrian safety in place, and then also the kids in schools on that block just by itself. I think that there needs to be some improvement to that side of our neighborhood, and it's a little risky living on Bloomington.
Thank you. For this first audience question, we'll start with Mr. Burke. As a city council candidate, what communities in Richfield have you made an effort to reach out to and meet with in order to learn about the issues that are important and unique to that particular community?
Well, again, Simon Troutman has been a great mentor in doing that. He has introduced me, especially to some of the shop owners on Penn Avenue, people from diverse backgrounds, and he's been very supportive in educating me about some of the issues from people from diverse backgrounds. And being part of the group that's working to work on the improvements to the parks and so on through the referenda, definitely have learned about the different needs from those different groups, about those different facilities.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Dursa?
I give credit to my small but mighty team of door knockers who have made a commitment both for the primary and for the general election to knock on every door in Ward 1. We didn't quite make it with the primary. I'm optimistic that we can make it in the general. It's important to me that all people have a chance to have their voice heard. In terms of specific community groups, just this week I met with reps, Richfield's Equity and Public Safety Group, who shared some of their past advocacy work and some goals for the future. I've met with a group from the Richfield High School, the Beacon group of teens who have spent the summer when some people are, relaxing and having fun. I'm sure they did that too, but they also did participatory research on what amenities we need in the city to make sure that our teens have something to do that is fun and enriching. And I just, it was such a great exchange and dialogue of our future leaders in Richfield.
Thank you. Ms. Coleman-Woods?
I have to say that my involvement in our community is probably one of my strengths. I've talked to a lot of different types of people in just Ward 1 alone. But I think that mostly I've talked to a lot of the Hispanic business owners that literally have the shops around the perimeter of our city, and they're concerned about the community being a place where it's still affordable for people to grocery shop, and I also think that the biggest part of our investment in our parks and our community center are huge, and even the parking at Washington Park, for instance. I've heard a lot of people talk about that while we've been canvassing the neighborhood. I think we're almost there.
Thank you. Mr. Hayford O'Leary?
Yeah, in terms of specific organized groups, certainly I've met throughout this campaign and the previous one and my time in office, and it is always great to hear from those groups. But I would say specifically on the campaign, I do think reaching the unorganized groups, the people who are from different backgrounds, who aren't necessarily part of a particular advocacy organization, is really important. In addition to the other candidates, knocking doors is one of the most important ways to reach people. And I would add, specifically, it's been important to me to try to reach people who live in our apartment buildings. If anybody who's ever volunteered for a campaign, you have to know it's a little bit trickier to get into those. It's a little bit more fuss managing access with management and everything. But it's so important because the reality is people have very different backgrounds, people have very different experiences based on where they live. I've been glad to knock personally at Linwood Commons and Linview. And I'm excited to continue to connect with both single-family home and multifamily residents in the future.
Thank you. For the next question, we'll start with Ms. Stursa. West Richfield has PennFest, but everything else is east. How would you make West feel valued?
East feel valued?
I think Eastfield.
Yeah, I mean,
How would you make West Richfield feel valued? I think is what is meant.
PennFest is the creation of the community. It's community members coming together and saying, hey, let's celebrate. I support all community-led endeavors like that. So if someone has an idea and they want to, get some momentum behind it, I'll be a cheerleader for that. I think those events are great for me to get to, for me as a resident, to get to know what's happening in my community with community groups, with running into neighbors that sometimes, come winter I won't see as often. And I see tremendous value. I love what's happening with the re-energized 4th of July group. I hope that they continue to be successful. I think these community events are very important in developing community spirit. So I would love to hear ideas and I would love to support them.
Thank you. Ms. Coleman-Woods?
I have to agree there. PennFest is is a big draw for our area. I think it's gotten bigger and bigger every year, and I think that it's worth exploring something like that for the east side as well. I don't think that we see that there's a line anywhere in our city, but maybe something like that in terms of the revitalization of the Fourth of July committee. I think that it's going to be even bigger next year, that it has been scaled back, but then I think that people look forward to coming to Richfield for the 4th of July, and it can draw a lot of people. So I think that there are some things that we can do on the east side to make it more enticing to come over to the other side of the city.
Thank you. Mr. Hayford O'Leary?
Thank you. I was also a little bit taken aback by the premise of the question, because I do think West Richfield has a lot of amenities, but I will respect the question and answer that. I think the most important thing we can do for the west side of Richfield is support a really good redesign of Penn Avenue. We are expecting that to come forward in the late 2020s. It is a county road, so it'll be in partnership with Hennepin County. But we've had a really passionate group of supporters trying to make Penn Central, the Penn and 66th area, a really attractive small business district. And they've made a lot of progress, but that street is the singular problem and the singular reason why it doesn't feel like a good small business district. And we need to be really careful. Although I'm proud of what I mentioned on Nicollet Avenue, the county is still very focused on moving cars through, and that continues to be the priority. And we can't really have a walkable main street that supports small business if that is the main priority. So we need to do at least as well as Nicollet, but we need to really push them further for that context to make sure that that small business district feels treasured and feels like a place people want to go.
Thank you. Mr. Burke?
I mean, I agree that if you want to make the west side more attractive to events, that you have to make Penn Avenue more attractive, and to get bicycles off the road, wider spaces for pedestrians and bicycles, then it's more conducive to having festivals along the way. So I would agree with that.
Thank you. For this next question, we'll start with Mr. Hayford O'Leary. This question has to do with redevelopment and small business. With upcoming redevelopment, how do you plan to support small business owners in staying in the city and not losing their businesses?
Thank you. Yeah, that is one of the real challenges we face, is we'll have buildings that are not the right land use, the right tax base, but they're providing really important affordable spaces for small business. I think some of the programs we started through the HRA and EDA are really important to help provide financial support to people who want to stay in Richfield, as well as additional programs available for both moving and new businesses that support some of their sewer charges. I will say we first used that with the Linview project, but we only had a couple takers on it, so I think we need to continue to look on what we can possibly do to support that. I think redevelopment is important, and I support it, but a lot of what makes Richfield interesting is having those unique small businesses, and they are going to require some financial help to be able to stay in Richfield when that occurs.
Thank you. Mr. Burke?
You know, that is one area that I will admit that I need more education on, but I would like to know if the city already reaches out and goes to events where, for example, food and restaurant conventions or things like that. If the city reaches out to places where you have people who are thinking about opening businesses and they have conventions and they talk about these things, does the city send someone out there and encourage these places to come to Richfield? I'm not aware of that. If not, that's something that the city should be doing. Should be reaching out to these conventions where you have businesses, small business conventions or restaurant conventions or other kinds of conventions where people can learn about Richfield and learn about the opportunities here, because we do have places, we do have spaces to bring these businesses.
Thank you. Ms. Sturza?
That's definitely a concern to have on the radar when you create an environment right for redevelopment, is making sure that our small business owners don't get displaced outside of our community. And I think the EDA and the HRA is leading great work in that space. I think that whether it's communication or better tailoring the programs to meet the needs of our small business community, I'm not sure what the tension is for not having more utilization of the programs that we have, but I think we need to continue to be great partners with the EDA and HRA to lead that work in supporting our small businesses. They're what make Richfield a special place to be, and want to do anything we can to support them.
Thank you. Ms. Coleman Woods?
Well, I'm interested in finding out what we are doing to incentivize small business owners to stay here and to really keep that going and to bring visibility to that. I think a lot of people may be like people like myself who may not know about the programs that are being offered through the city. I will absolutely admit that I had to look up some of the programs that helped with renovating our house that had to come just straight from my own keyboard. And it isn't something that people were widely advertising. So I think that that's something that we can do better with communicating and getting out the word about the kind of programs that incentivize businesses to stay here. So maybe we could do some better marketing.
Thank you. For this next question, we'll start with Ms. Coleman Woods. This is to deal with transportation. Richfield is advocating for alternative transportation. What changes would you like to see, especially relating to bus transportation?
I live right on Bloomington Avenue, and it's a huge bus transit station, like a one big transit area. So it has been something that I've seen for years, having been people's primary mode of transportation. It is something that is required, and I think in order to be good stewards and to reduce our carbon footprint, we need more public transportation right here or even around Richfield. I've seen people rely on Lyft and Uber to get to work, and maybe some of those transportation options can be expanded even just right around our little neighborhood here.
Thank you. Mr. Burke?
I think Richfield at this time
to reduce the impact of that. Going forward, I want to see us really actively support our arterial bus rapid transit lines, things like the D line. Those are possibilities, especially on Nicollet and Penn Avenue, where a future line is anticipated. I think those make a big difference in making transit more functional and more attractive. And then I also want to touch on something that Ms. Dursa said earlier about, well, actually Mr. Burke just now, about sidewalks. We don't have a good approach to sidewalks at all. We see areas where there's redevelopment occurring, we see areas of elevated traffic, and we have no funding source, we have no standards, we have no system by which we're filling those obvious high need gaps. I understand sidewalks can be controversial, but when we're talking about people using buses, people using alternative modes, like getting to the front door, that last little bit, that last 100 feet really matters, and we need to do better about it.
Thank you. Ms. Dursa?
I love all of the work that the city has done in terms of supporting alternative transportation. I think partnering with Metro Transit and making sure that we have as much bus routes and frequency as demand supports, but also advocating for when there are reductions, I think is really important. And it is really important to making that safe. Utilizing alternative transportations needs to be safe if we want to encourage people to do that. So whether that is, like I mentioned earlier, I'm a strong advocate for a sidewalk policy. We need to make, many of these bus routes are on county roads, but, walking home after you get off that county road, it needs to be a safe experience. And right now, I don't think that it's safe enough. So I will advocate for creating a sidewalk policy that addresses those I also think we need to continue to make sure that we have safe bike routes for people who are choosing to use that mode of transportation as well.
Thank you. I think we have time just for one more question, then we'll go to closing statements. For this last question, we'll start with Mr. Hayford O'Leary. Could you support an adult daycare, early childhood, and family services facility at the hub? My husband went to Mount Olivet Day for 16 years. It was so helpful.
I don't have a lot of background knowledge in that particular issue. To the best of my understanding, our current zoning would allow that, and I don't see any reason why that would be an issue. I know that does serve an important community need, and I believe I would be supportive, but I would certainly need to know a little bit more about the issue.
Thank you. Mr. Burke?
A number of the veterans that I have provided legal advice to, this is something that they do struggle with, is some of them do not qualify for veteran housing. They are looking for alternatives in the community. It is life-changing for veterans who, and for anyone else in that situation, who cannot stay at home, who cannot be cared for at home, to have those facilities available. So yes, I would certainly support something like that.
Ms. Coleman Woods?
I am absolutely in support of a early childhood family education center or a adult daycare facility, which allows for a population of people that really need an outlet. I also think that, like our neighboring cities, they've got indoor gyms and like community centers that have the ability to support those kind of activities, and that special population of people that really deserve, like I said, an outlet so that they have somewhere to go to exercise or to just be in community with others. I think that I'm fully supportive of that.
Thank you. Ms. Stursa?
My mom actually lived at Mount Olivet on the nursing home side for several years, and watching the exchanges that would happen at that facility were pretty cool. Like, it was I never experienced it very long, but just even walking by it, it felt meaningful to even watch those exchanges. So I do think that they're supportive. There was a business model issue with that as well, I believe. So that is outside of the scope of the council. But I think intergenerational exchange is very important, and I obviously would support that, anything that we could do to support that. I don't know offhand about the zoning restrictions around the hub, if that is permitted, but certainly there's a process, if it's not, that it could go through that review. But I do think a lot of neat things happen when different generations interact with one another.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to closing statements now, and you each have 2 minutes. For this, we'll start with Ms. Coleman Woods.
Great. As a city council member, I want every resident to feel like Richfield's their safe place. Again, many people in our community have felt underrepresented, undervalued, or unincluded. And my goal is to make sure that we make visible progress towards making people like myself feel comfortable in running for city council, or to even get out and door knock. During this process, I've learned that even people like myself have been encouraged to not door knock alone, which is something that I think we're making progress with. I've had a great experience with the campaign, people who are supporting me, and it is heartwarming to think that people like myself can get support from people around us. In addition to our campaign supporting much needed upgrades to the community center, the Veterans Park, the municipal pool, and the Wood Lake Nature Center, these amenities are crucial to keeping our community vibrant, attracting families, and providing outlets for our youth to thrive. Investing in our youth is probably the next best thing that we can do for our community to continue to drive people to stay here, for people to get involved in our community, for people to get involved in our civic organizations and our commissions. If we can continue to drive our youth to be involved, I think that this will catapult our city into being bigger and better every generation.
Thank you. Ms. Dursa?
Yeah, thanks for the League of Women Voters today for hosting this, and thanks for the discussion. As I've knocked on doors and met with community groups, it's been really energizing to see how many people care about the city. As I said in my opening statement, my priorities are affordability, sustainability, and inclusion. Those aren't just my priorities. They're the priorities of so many of us in Richfield. And I'm looking forward to us working together to advance these. With my experience, I'm confident that we can. I appreciate all the support I received in the primary election, and I hope I've earned your vote today. If you want to learn more about my campaign, you can visit my website at brettrichfield.org or my Facebook page, and I'll be hanging out in the lobby after this too. So I really welcome any comments, questions, discussion. Very supportive of all of that, and thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Burke?
I also want to thank the League of Women Voters for providing this opportunity to engage with the public. It's first time I've been on camera as far as reaching out to the public, and it's not so bad. Hopefully you get a chance to do it too. I also want to thank the people that have endorsed me. I've had endorsements from obviously Simon Troutman, who got me to go along with this and do this, but Debbie Cattell, Mike Howard, Edwina Garcia, they have provided me with endorsements, and not only endorsements, but they've mentored. They've provided great mentorship. I've learned a great deal from this. I didn't think I would learn as much as I have, but this is what happens when you go out and canvass. There are issues that I haven't even had a chance to talk about. For example, trimming of trees away from the power lines is a major concern about that. There's a concern about the reorganization of the community youth athletic programs to make them a little more centralized. More trees. The people all over my ward, they want more trees. These are the things that I've learned about, and I think the city's on a great path. We've had great leadership in the past, and I want to be a part of continuing that great movement forward. So thanks for the time.
Thank you. Mr. Hayford O'Leary?
Thank you. Yeah, thanks to the League of Women Voters for organizing this, and thanks to everyone who came and spent some of their Saturday morning with us today. When I moved to Richfield, I grew up in Northfield, a small town about 45 minutes south, and their city government growing up and being interested in that stuff was just kind of constantly mired in conflict. And I remember when I was in high school in 2006, they were talking about renovating their municipal liquor store. And 20 years later, they're finally doing it. And it was such whiplash when I came to Richfield when they were talking about renovating their municipal liquor stores, and it was just done, all four of them, in a year or two. And that's something I see, throughout my time in Richfield. Richfield gets it done, and Richfield doesn't rest on its laurels, and I've been really proud to be part of that. Things like our street reconstructions, things like this building that was completed just before I moved to Richfield. We know that we want to treasure the best of what Richfield has, and we also know that we can be even better, and we are constantly striving towards that. I'm glad to support the referendum for the parks, as well as the continued investments I've mentioned, and a continued private redevelopment throughout our city. Richfield is better than it was 10 years ago, and Richfield will be even better in another 10 years. I'm happy to be a part of that, and I'm excited to continue working with at least two of you, and probably all three of you in some capacity going forward. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's give a round of applause to our candidates.
I just want to say on behalf of the Richfield League of Women Voters, thank you for doing this. I was a 4-term city council member. I have been in your shoes. I know what it feels like. But I really appreciated what Ms. Coleman Roy said. It is heartwarming when you feel that support and you go out on those doors. And I always said some of my best neighborhood meetings occurred in the dairy department at Lund's. And I always made sure I combed my hair before I went to that.